Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the world's most exciting classroom. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I'll be your host for today. We've got a bit of a different format that we're going to have for the next couple of months. So as many of you know, classes here in Canada, in the US, in the UK, they are heading out for summer vacation. So July and August, we won't have a lot of students hanging around, which is why we are going to shorten the world's most exciting classroom for the next 2 months. So we're going to have probably about 30-minute sessions where we're going to have live uplinks from the ship. We're going to have guest speakers. We'll have Darwin leaders join us to share their experiences from when they joined us in different ports. And then we'll probably keep having a curiosity of the week as well. So for the moment, we're going to shelf things like the experiments and the experiment results, and also the Kahoot quizzes, because we're just not going to have as much students as we would if it were during the school year from September through the end of June. So July and August, we will still have the world's most exciting classroom. They're just going to be shorter versions, roughly about 30 minutes in length. So what are we up to today? Well, the Oosterschelde is sailing right now on the Pacific, but over the last few days, we had the ability to do something pretty awesome. I'm going to share my screen here. Let's get the map up, and I'll show you what I mean. So let's make this full screen. There we go. We are sailing towards Mangareva. So if I move the map, you can see where we're heading up here. And I will show you where we came from. Let me zoom in a little bit. We managed to stop at the Pitcairn Island group. And this was never a sure thing because there really isn't a calm harbor here on Pitcairn. And if we'd arrived and it was bad conditions, we were unable to land the Zodiac, well, we would have had to kind of just take a look at Pitcairn and then sail on from there without being able to stop. But as luck would have it, we had the conditions we needed and we were able to spend a little bit of time there. So you can see a beautiful drone shot here of Pitcairn from Tom Dixon. We're going to talk to Tom shortly. About 15 minutes from now, we'll have a beam in from the ship. Hopefully Jut, our researcher, will be there. Tom, our camera operator, and Grant, one of the other researchers, will be there to talk to us and update us a little bit on what they've been up to. So this is Pitcairn. It is pretty wild, pretty remote in the Pacific. We were able to go ashore, and Jut was able to get out and continue the research he started on Rapa Nui. So Rapa Nui, he was out on the cliffs, he was in the caves sampling the invertebrates. He did the same thing on Pitcairn, and then he will do the same thing in Mangareva. He is looking at the canoe bug theory, whether the Polynesians were taking invertebrates from island to island as they visited them. And we'll have a little bit to talk about potential new species as well. These are areas that aren't sampled very often. So caves and cliff sides can have endemic species found nowhere else in the world, and as of yet unknown to science. So we might have a few more announcements to make in the coming weeks, which we're pretty excited about. So you can see we're moving along this track. We have a few pictures here that the crew have dropped in for us. Let me zoom out a little bit. There we go. We'll have to ask about this. It looks like on one of the sails, they might have been having a little bit of difficulty with the rings. Looks like they might have been doing some repairs here. So when we do connect, we'll have to ask about that. You can see things were a little wet, a little windy. And then we got one more picture here. So again, they're kind of looking at those rings and working on the sail. So maybe they had a little bit of trouble. You can see where we are now. If I back out a little bit more, you can see where we're heading, Mangareva, where we'll have some more science going on in the field. We'll have a new Explorers Club researcher named Maria joining us, who we'll meet soon. So it's not going to be very long. It's not a lot of ocean to cover before we make it from Pitcairn to Mangareva. So what we're going to do now, before we have them join us live from the ship, from the Oosterschelde, we have a video focusing on the wildlife of Pitcairn and one of the other islands in the group, Henderson. And so these islands have wildlife found nowhere else in the world, endemic species. But due to pressure from humans, some of that wildlife has disappeared. Some of those plants have disappeared. And of course, there's still pressure on them. So a few years ago, Stew McPherson, our expedition leader, visited the islands, and he created a great video from his time there, looking at the wildlife of Henderson and the wildlife of Pitcairn. So let's take a look at that together. Then we can talk to Jut, Tom, and Grant about some of that wildlife. So here we go. Screen share coming your way.
The UK overseas territories are scattered across all 7 seas. Many are remote and isolated. The territory of Pitcairn is lost in the vastness of the Pacific Ocean, halfway between South America and New Zealand. The only way to get there is by cargo ship from French Polynesia, 700 kilometers away. The territory is made up of 4 tiny islands. Pitcairn itself is the only inhabited one. It was home to Polynesians until about 700 years ago. Later, it became home to the mutineers from the Bounty, and it's been inhabited ever since. Because it's been inhabited for so long, many plants and animals here are not native, including a few surprises.
The largest of the introduced animals is this Galapagos tortoise called Mrs. T. She was one of several that was dropped off on the island over 50 years ago. There you go.
Many of the plants here are also aliens. These huge fig trees, for example. These newcomers have pushed out Pitcairn's native plants. Pitcairn has several kinds of plants found nowhere else. Some now on the verge of extinction.
Yeah, okay, so this is the yellow fowltooth, the abetalon. We've only got one left growing in the wild, which is quite sad actually.
It's very sobering to see such a rare plant.
See in there? You see the little buds in there coming out? Yeah. So she's going to be blooming within a week.
But all is not lost. Pitcairn's rare plants are now being propagated at a conservation centre on the island. If the island itself is drastically changed by introduced species, the reefs offshore are less so. Beneath the waves, shoals of brassy chub congregate over exposed outcrops. Coral gardens provide homes for colourful fish. "200 kilometres away, Henderson Island has been uninhabited since the Polynesians disappeared around 700 years ago. So its lush forests have very few introduced species. In the vastness of the ocean, it provides a nesting site for many seabirds. A masked booby. Though it's far from paradise, this bird is infected with parasitic flies that scurry through its head feathers, where it can't reach them. Masked boobies occur right around the tropics. But Henderson's forests also shelter some unique seabirds. Henderson petrels. Although they range far and wide over the ocean, they all return to this one tiny island to nest. And land birds also made it here and evolved into many new species, like the Henderson lorikeet, and the Henderson fruit dove. Beneath them, the forest floor is alive with land hermit crabs. Offshore, Henderson's coral reefs are spectacular. They've had a long time to recover from fishing. Now, fish of all shapes and sizes swim through crystal waters. Shoals of blackjack, black-tip groupers, grey reef sharks, and the colours are dazzling. Shoals of sunset antheas, long-nosed butterfly fish, and ornate and four-spot butterfly fish. Their colour, number and diversity is astounding. But perhaps the most incredible revelation from diving on Henderson's reefs is that this is what all coral reefs should look like.
Okay, so that gives us a real look at two different islands, part of the same island group, but you can see kind of two different fates of those islands. You have Pitcairn, which has been inhabited for quite some time. A lot of the products have to be brought to the island, foodstuffs and things like that. So invasive species are brought along. Obviously, people being on the island and changing the environment have led to a loss of a lot of the endemic species. You saw that plant species in the video that Stew showed you, where there's only one left. Then you compare it to somewhere like Henderson, where people don't live. You still have a lot of the endemic species, and you saw those beautiful, pristine coral reefs that were surrounding the islands. So you can really see in the Pitcairn Island group, between Pitcairn and Henderson, the difference between an island that's inhabited and visited and one that's left more to nature run its course. So I see that the Oosterschelde is popped in the background. I see Tom, I see Grant. Looks like they're just getting ready. We'll give them a second to get set up. They were just on the island, so they're going to be able to tell us a little bit about what it's like, what they saw. And effectively, there's roughly 50 people on Pitcairn. So when the Oosterschelde showed up, that probably came pretty close to doubling the population for a day or two. So let's see. It looks like they might be ready to come in. Okay. Hey, Grant. Hey, Tom.
Oh. Hi.
Hey, guys. How are you?
We're doing good. I think we're excited about our time at Pitcairn still.
Yeah, I can imagine. Did you get an exact number? It bounces around online. Sometimes it's 47, 50.
57? How many people in Pitcairn? Wait, no, it's more than that. 46.
That's what the mayor said.
We're getting crazy numbers.
You got 38 and 46.
All right.
I thought it was 54.
It's varied online too. Some places it's 47. Yeah. Well, first of all, it was kind of hit or miss whether you'd be able to land at all. So clearly the conditions must have been pretty decent when you arrived.
Yeah, on the way, like it was laptops. Got a bit of a roll on today. No, on the journey over, we had some like reasonably rough conditions. It wasn't too crazy, but then yeah, a few days before arriving in Pitcairn, it really calmed down. And it was, yeah, super calm.
Our
we got there.
our first boat ride into Adamstown was pretty wet.
Yeah, I can imagine. Was it a pretty big deal when you guys showed up? Did the whole island turn out?
Pretty much, yeah,
Kind
yeah.
of felt like it, yeah.
Well, and it was pretty amazing just how welcoming and how friendly everybody was. I mean, like everybody is really expecting visitors. You know, I think really excited for any visitors that are there. Everybody's kind of a part of it. Everybody's part of the greeting and everybody's part of the send off.
All right, very cool. Well, Tom, I want to start off talking to you a little bit because I've got a little bit of footage here queued up, some images as well, because you launched the drone as you were approaching the island. So let's play the drone footage, and then feel free to talk over it as well. You know, just what it was like to fly around the island. So here, I'm going to queue it up, and it should be on the screen now. There we go.
Yeah, so this was us actually arriving at Pitcairn. What was it, like the 24th?
24th.
Yeah, so we actually arrived right at the break of dawn, which was pretty special. Just as we were arriving, like it was still dark, so obviously we saw this on the distance, and then as soon as we got right next to it, the sun came out. It's some of the rugged coastline. So this was one of the beaches that I was working with Jut on his canoe bug project. You can probably see him in the background working away, looking for the bugs. And yeah, the island is not too big at all.
No.
And then this was the second, another one of the locations we were working. We actually had to scramble down the side of this cliff face to get down to this beach.
Wow. So did you essentially have 2 days? Was it 2 days you guys spent there?
2 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was initially just going to be one, and then the conditions held out at anchor, so the captain let us stay another day. This is the little boat they picked us up and took us to the ship on.
Oh, very
That's waving
cool.
goodbye.
As always, Tom, just amazing drone footage.
Thank you very much. And then this was the sunset on our last day, just before we heaved anchor and head off back towards Mangareva.
Not too shabby. So, Tom, that's what I want to talk to you about for a minute now is I know you were out in the field with Jut. I'm going to share a couple of photos now, and maybe we can talk a little bit about those. Let me switch my screen share. Make sure I share the right one. There we go. All right, let's take a look at some of these photos. So some of these we saw on the drone already, but I mean, yeah, absolutely incredible. Did they mention at all when the last ship visited? How long had it been since someone had stopped by?
I think it was actually Bark Europa, which was like a week before, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So not too long ago, and then they've got another one scheduled in for next week, I think. So it's actually their quiet season, but they're still getting a few boats in every now and then.
Yeah. So here's just a couple photos. And then there's one from the ship looking at the island. So you did get out there in the field. I can see you there at the Explorers Club flag. Who are some of the people in this photo? Are these passengers? Are these people from the island?
So there's two people either side. Well, apart from me, they were both guests. We had Gary and Daryl, and then next in are Brenda and Mike, who are two locals from the island, and then obviously Jut, who has appeared with us now.
Do we have Jut there?
Yes, I'm here.
Hey, Jut, how are you?
I'm doing great. I don't know. Can you see me? No, I guess not. I'm way out
I
of the
think
frame.
he's just playing the photos now.
You right now have
Okay.
a few photos up, Jut, because we're just talking a little bit about the research. So, Jut, how excited were you to be able to land on Pitcairn?
Super stoked. But it took me a good, probably a couple of 3 hours before I got my land legs back. I was wobbly all the way down a very slippery and interesting slope to get to the coast once we got onto Pitcairn. But as soon as I got down there, I was fine. The work went really well. Right now, and it's very preliminary. It seems that we could have as many as 50 different species. That will obviously require us to look at them more scrutinizingly through a microscope and formally identify them. But the work went really well. It was a great citizen science campaign. We had some of the guests here that gave up their time to participate in collecting with us. And the Pitcairners were wonderful. They assisted us in collecting as well, and were wonderful hosts. It was an absolute pleasure to experience the island. And who knows? I might be doing a 3-month stint there in the not too distant future.
Wow. So Jut, let me just confirm that was over 50 species you were able to collect while you were there, probably somewhere around that.
Somewhere in that neighborhood. Just doing a very rough back of the cocktail napkin estimate. But yeah, it does seem that we have about that many.
Wow. Very cool. It looks like you had some volunteers as well to come out with you, which is great.
Oh yeah. We had 3 different guests from the ship that volunteered to help us collect.
And then so Tom or Jut, feel free to jump in on any of these photos, but was it difficult to find sites, or was it pretty easy to find sites like this cave site here?
That was let me see, what are we looking at? Oh yeah, that's Cabin Cave. That's really not a true cave, it's a shelter. It goes back about 1.5 meters, 2 meters. That was purely by happenstance. We went to a location that our guide Brenda had recommended that we go to, and there was a cave. So we popped in there and we collected in there. It was full of ferns. Yeah. Go ahead.
Very
we have
cool.
folks. We're live streaming. So yeah, that's us collecting. We were basically collecting in the detritus, and that's an image of me staring at the ground until I went cross-eyed. And that's kind of the process. You just look very closely at the ground. When you see something move, you try to collect it. Oftentimes, these animals are minute, very, very tiny invertebrates, and yeah, that's kind of the process. I think I demonstrated it a few 2 weeks ago.
You did a couple weeks ago, yeah.
Yeah. We applied the same technique.
Awesome.
So basically,
cool.
just using paintbrushes and forceps to collect arthropods as we encountered them, and yeah, that was it.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like they were pretty accommodating, Jut, if they want you back for another 3 months.
Yeah, they were able to tolerate me for that long, and then they invite for 2 days, and they invited me back for 3 months. So we'll see how it goes.
Awesome. So Tom, you were out with Jut. You were doing some filming, some photography. Was it challenging out there in the field with them?
Yeah, it was actually. We ended up going down some pretty precarious paths and getting dragged through a few forests, but it was great fun. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, Grant, Jut did mention the Citizen Science Project. I have a couple slides queued up here for it. Do you want to tell me us a little bit more about it?
Sure. So in addition to Jut's project, I had the idea of organizing a project to do a vegetation survey of Pitcairn. So I asked all the guests who were willing, as they were moving about the island over their 2 days, to take pictures of any plants or animals, especially the plants. It looks like they were growing freely, so I didn't want them to take pictures of stuff in people's garden, but stuff that looks like it's naturalized, so like growing in the wild in Pitcairn. And so we don't have all of our observations up yet. We only have 86, and that's just from a few people that have started uploading. I think we should have a couple hundred observations up by the end of it. And our goal is that we'll end up with a breakdown of sort of where the native plants are on the island and where the non-native introduced plants are on the island. And hopefully it can help us kind of prioritize areas for conservation.
Yeah. And it looks like you covered some good ground here from the observation map.
And this is like, we have maybe 25% of the observations in right now. So yeah. I think it's going to just be filled in with more of those tick marks there. Yeah. And this is, I should say, anybody could view our project online. We use a database called, or it's like a bioinformatics database called iNaturalist, where anybody in their backyard can upload any pictures of plants or animals, and experts will come in and ID your observations. And it's useful for research. So it's helping, just like with my bird counts, it's putting a time and a location next to a species. And it's really helpful for us tracking the movements of species, whether it's plant introductions or bird migrations or whatever.
Okay, very cool. So Grant, you also shared a video with me of the seabird. You're getting the seabird project off the ground. I think you were able to film a rare or endangered warbler on the island. So do you want to cue the video up before we share it?
Sure. I'll introduce it and say that so I started filming in Pitcairn for this longer term project that I'm doing on it's actually on land birds of the Pacific Islands. When we think of the Pacific Ocean, when we think about birds, we often think about all of the tropic birds and all of the like albatrosses and stuff that's spending the time in the ocean. But there's all of these interesting birds that are on land, and most of them happen to be threatened because of the vulnerability of growing up on an island. And so we had our first example of one of these birds in Pitcairn. It was the endangered Pitcairn reed warbler. And I can narrate the video as well. We don't have much audio with it.
Sure. Let me cue it up. And I will leave you in as well so that you can do that narration. There we go. Pacific birds. It should come up now.
So we've got Tom's amazing drone footage again. The Pitcairn group represents the southernmost extent of the Tuamotu archipelago. So here you can see we're going over the vegetation of Pitcairn. The next clip here, so we're going down into the forest level, and this bit here, this is what the native forest of Pitcairn looks like. However, it's only growing in like less than 5% of the island. There's only a few patches left with the native forest. And so most of our time working with these warblers, I was actually working with them in the presence of this endangered plant. So this is the Pitcairn reed warbler. They've got these bright white markings on them when they're adults. The young ones are more of a solid brown color. This is the largest hermit crab that I've ever seen in my life. It's a terrestrial forest crab. It's got spines all over down the legs. It was huge. It probably weighed like 4 or 5 pounds. And then we've got warblers feeding on the ground, not afraid of the forest crabs. And they were just catching insects. So this is a bird that it's classified as endangered. We actually don't have good estimates of the population, but it's somewhere between 200 individuals left or 2,000. And this is one of the main threats today. So this is the invasive rose apple. It's really beautiful, but they're from Central and South America, and they grow so densely that they block out all of the native vegetation. So they completely shade out the sunlight here. And so it's a big problem. And you can see all of this here. It was all the same kind of plant there, and it's covering now. It looks like up to like 70% of the island is just covered with the rose apple, and there's nothing else other than rose apple that can grow below the canopy there. The native plants just can't compete with it, and so it's a big issue, and it's one of the big remaining threats against this warbler.
So the warbler, Grant, is it endemic to just Pitcairn or the whole island group?
So this warbler is endemic to just Pitcairn. Henderson has a different species of reed warbler that lives there. And there's been a lot of recent work on the reed warblers of the Pacific because for being such small birds, you would think that they probably only made it to like the very far end of the Pacific once. And then it was sort of like a Darwin's finch situation where you get one bird that reaches an island and then it spreads to nearby islands and speciates that way and becomes new species. But molecular analysis of looking at the genetics of these warblers, it shows us that there are multiple colonization events across the Pacific. So warblers that are next door neighbors to each other, such as on Pitcairn and Henderson, might not be each other's closest relative. So it's really amazing because these are small songbirds and they're crossing the largest ocean on Earth and doing it not just once, but multiple times and spreading to some of these islands.
All right. Well, Grant, that's a pretty good start on the Landbird project, is an endemic warbler on Pitcairn, so not too shabby.
Oh, I'll add, I was my own camera guy here, so that was a whole learning experience for me. So I was like using a tripod for the first time, and it's there was definitely a learning curve, but I'm pretty proud with what I pulled off.
Yeah, look great.
So, sorry, I'll say.
Gonna put me out of a job.
Yeah, not quite. I don't feel confident for the drones, but you can expect some good like natural history style segments out of this film that I'm producing.
Yeah. And what's your best guess on the map? It doesn't look like Mangareva is too far. What's the best estimate for arrival?
I think tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yeah.
I think we arrive tomorrow. Saturday.
Wow, that's fast. All right. Well, we'll have to talk when you get there about the best time to broadcast, because we'd love to go from the field next week with the land unit. That would be awesome. And Tom, if you're able to throw the ROV in the water a little bit, it would be great to get some footage.
Oh, yeah, definitely. We're also hoping to jump in with underwater housing as well. So we'll have plenty of underwater stuff, hopefully. Perfect.
Sounds great. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining in today. We're doing abbreviated World's Most Exciting Classrooms for the next couple of months because it's summertime for most students, especially in the Northern Hemisphere. But it's great to be able to still connect to the ship and still keep track of you guys and where you are.
It's a pleasure.
All right. We will see you at Mangareva. Say bye to Jut. And yeah, we'll see you guys next week sometime.
Nice one. Thanks, Joe.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thanks, guys. All right. Very cool. So we got to connect with Jut and Grant and Tom out on the Oosterschelde. And like we saw on the map, Mangareva didn't look that far away. In fact, they are only about a day away. They could arrive as soon as tomorrow evening and maybe even be disembarking by Saturday. So next week, the plan is to go live on the island. Hopefully we can be out in the field using our Starlink land unit. What do we need to do to wrap up today? We need to look at our curiosity of the week. So we need our answer from last week's, and then we need our brand new one for this week. So let's take a look at our curiosity of the week from last week.
Welcome back, everyone. Last week's curiosity was this beautiful white intricate object. We had a lot of answers and a lot of guesses that came in by email. Some of them right, some of them wrong. Some people guessed an ammonite, such as this one here, but I'm afraid to say ammonites are long extinct, so it isn't an ammonite. Although, of course, I can see where you're going with that. It does look similar and has a similar spiral pattern. Quite a few people said a chambered nautilus. Well, I'm afraid to say this is a chambered nautilus. You're getting closer. It's a type of cephalopod, this white object here. It's distantly related to nautiluses. It's often called a paper nautilus, but it actually is a type of octopus. True nautilus, such as this chambered nautilus here, have a hard shell, and the animal, a bit like an octopus, lives inside of it for its whole life. That's a true nautilus. It has chambers, just like this ammonite, that are filled with gas that enable the nautilus to go up and down by regulating its buoyancy in its shell. So that's a true nautilus. This curiosity is known as a paper nautilus. It's a bit unfair because it's not actually a true nautilus at all. It's a type of octopus. And the animal doesn't live in the shell like the chambered nautilus. Instead, it produces this incredible wafer-thin structure as a case for its eggs. So the animal lives inside here only temporarily. It's otherwise free swimming. It produces this and lays its eggs inside this incredible structure. So those that guessed a paper nautilus were absolutely right. And well done, because that's quite a tricky question. So let's go back to Joe now and find out who won this week's Natural History Curiosity of the Week £50 Amazon gift voucher prize. Thank you for taking part.
All right, so there we go. A paper nautilus was our curiosity from last week. We're going to keep the curiosities going over the course of the summer, but we're going to put the experiments and Kahoot quizzes on hold for now and wait till September when we have everybody back in the classroom and we can keep them going nice and filled up. But we're going to do a couple things before I wrap up today. The first one is our brand new curiosity. So let me share that right now. Let's see what Stu has on deck for us.
Welcome back, everyone. For this week's curiosity, your task is to try and identify this beautiful rock. It's a very famous type of mineral, and you might be able to find the answer online. One of its distinctive characteristics is if you move it gently in the light, you'll see this beautiful shimmering effect that's known as a schiller, which is German for shimmer. The schiller of this particular rock is often blue and green. And also I've got this other little pebble of it, so you can see two examples. But very rarely it can even be orangey or red. Can you identify what this beautiful rock is made out of? Send in your answers to classroom@darwin200.com for a chance to win a £50 Amazon gift voucher prize. Join us next week to find out the answer. Good luck, and thank you for taking part.
All right, let's take that video down. As mentioned, classroom@darwin200.com is where you want to send your best answer, your best guess at what this week's curiosity of the week is. You have 1 week until we connect from Mangareva, hopefully live in the field. Hopefully we'll have some ROV and underwater footage for you as well of this island area, our first taste of coral in a while. So that should be fun. Let's take down the email, and we're going to wrap up as per usual with a shout out to our sponsors and our partners, without whom we wouldn't be sailing around the world. We wouldn't have young Darwin leaders coming on board the ship and learning about conservation for their future careers. We wouldn't have researchers on board, and we wouldn't be doing the world's most exciting classroom. So thank you so much for tuning in today as we talked about their time at Pitcairn, which is pretty amazing. They were able to land at such remote and historic and really some interesting endemic wildlife as well. So it's a really interesting island group, and it's great that we were able to make that stop and we didn't have to sail right by. We will sign off right after the sponsor thank you. So thank you again for being with us this week, and let's play our final video.